One of the most important revelations in the Falcon and the Winter Soldier TV show was that there was another Captain America back in the 1950s. And not only was there another person who received a stable version of the super soldier serum, but he was an African American, and history seemingly had no knowledge of him. Isaiah Bradley became an important person in Sam's life following the events of Avengers Endgame, as he helped him decide to ultimately pick up the shield to become the new Captain America, and that was despite Bradley's urgings otherwise. Bradley was used as a cautionary story in this series, if you remember, as he dealt with the overarching institutional racism found in the United States throughout the 20th century. If you examine what happened to Bradley and what happened to Steve Rogers, they were treated very differently after doing the exact same thing, actually. Here's a quote, and it pretty much sums it up perfectly. "A couple of the boys got captured on a mission. I heard the brass talking about blowing the POW camp to hell to hide the evidence. But those were my men, my brothers, not evidence. So I bust out of the facility one night, and I brought them boys back." Now that's Isaiah Bradley describing what was going to happen to the other African American men who were experimented on with the super soldier serum. During World War II, Steve Rogers defied his orders to go behind enemy lines so he could save an entire unit of POWs. But when Bradley did the same thing in the 1950s, he was thrown in prison for 30 years, and while incarcerated, he was subjected to inhuman testing and experimentation. Ultimately, the only difference between the two men was the color of their skin, which is why Bradley was so adamant in suggesting Sam shouldn't pick up the shield. Regardless, Sam did pick up the shield in the end, and he exonerated Bradley by ensuring his legacy was honored in the Smithsonian's exhibit on Captain America. And with his legacy restored and his place in history solidified, Bradley could finally get past the mistreatment that ruined his life for so many years. And the revelation of Bradley's existence and the story was an important factor in Sam's decision overall. It raised a couple of new questions about the MCU as a whole, though, actually. If a successful experiment in the 1950s created a new Captain America, then why wasn't it publicized or expanded upon? Furthermore, when the excrement hit the air conditioning, why wasn't Bradley tapped by someone like Nick Fury, whose whole job was to put together the Avengers initiative? While there could be dozens of reasons why Bradley was left to his own devices after faking his death, there's one that makes the most sense. It's unlikely that someone like Fury wasn't aware of Bradley or the program that created him. Because of this, he was almost certainly aware of what happened to him, and like Bucky, he wasn't willing to tap him for more service to a country that turned his back on him. Fury managed to find replacements who weren't already traumatized by the government that created them. After all, when he was speaking to Sam about the situation, Isaiah had this to say: "They were worried my story might get out, so they erased me, my history. But they've been doing that for 500 years. Pledge allegiance to that, my brother. They will never let a black man be Captain America, and even if they did, no self-respecting black man would ever want to be." Ultimately, it's fair to say that Bradley would never have willingly joined up for the government for anything, and you can't blame him for that. Fury probably knew this well, and he felt it best to leave the old soldier in peace, just as Bucky had done. In the end, Bradley's purpose in the MCU isn't to rejoin the heroes and help them defeat anyone. He exists as a reminder of how far we've come in the past 50 years, and also as a memorial to what happened so many years ago.